G'day everybody. Well, for today's little equipment autopsy, I figured we'd pull apart this Lovelock condensing unit, which I found on the side of the road. I'm guessing it's probably come off of some sort of vending machine or something. It's a heavy domestic light commercial type going by the Compressor, which is an old Tecum's Kirby compressor. I actually have the next model up from this one, so I may actually be able to get parts off of this if it doesn't work and use it to run the other compressor that I got. But I found it on the side of the road, like I probably said before. The guy who owned it was actually a Friggy and he was having a bit of a clean out. It has been recovered of gas. It's R12, pure CFC in a bottle there. There's the specs on it if you can sort of see it. It's awful dirty, by the way. But yeah, if you do find something like this and you want to pull it apart, make sure there's no gas in it, because you're dealing with some pretty serious laws there if you do let out refrigerant without proper licensing. I mean, there's nothing to stop you doing it, but if you get caught by the coppers or something, you're in big trouble. So yeah, get somebody to do it first. This one's had it all taken out, and they've actually undone the valves for me as well, just as a bit of proof. I mean, they're front seated, they're pretty tight, but they're being undone. But basically that's your suction side there, back to the compressor from the evaporator, which I don't have. A high pressure discharge out, as this one here goes up through the coil at the back, which is a very small coil actually. And then that's your subcooled side going down to through the service valve, and that'd go off to the TX valve or capillary line depending on whichever one it has, and through to the evaporator, and then it returns. So it's a very simple unit. Fan as well, that'll clean up alright, I'll keep that. Yeah, can't really say much. I'm not sure if it works. I will be ohming up the compressor. There's the cap on it on the side there, which says, can't see any ratings on that, but we can certainly test all that out once we start to get it apart. And yeah, the oil on it's from once it had the gas taken out. I had it sitting outside on a hot day, and of course the refrigerant that's in it, which doesn't actually matter, it boils out of the oil, because the oil will actually absorb quite a bit, and as it's done that, it's just leaked out, so that's really not much of a worry. But anyway, let's get this thing apart, because I do want to try and make an air compressor with that. Okay, well I got the whole thing apart, got the compressor off and everything, and the junction box on that open. It's in pretty good nick inside, apart from a few bugs and things, which are definitely going to have to come out of there. I mean, like, all of that's got to come off, because that'll cause short circuits and things, if it hasn't already, and buggered the compressor up. But going by the oil that's been leaking out of the coil on this thing, it's still nice and clear, so this thing could be a good goer, hopefully. I haven't taken that valve off because that's suction line, and I don't want to get metal shavings in there because I don't have a proper tube cutter to use on these. So it's basically just a hacksaw job like there, but that's discharged, so that doesn't matter too much. No, I have been able to get most of it out there anyway, so we should be alright. But I'm going to get the torch out later on, just carefully desolder this and actually just take all of that off by unsoldering it, because I don't want to get metal shavings and things in here, because that's what shortens the life of these compressors, is when you start getting particles in it. But the relay's up inside there. I don't want to go too far in case there's still something alive in here, but yeah, it's alright. I mean, apart from being awful dirty and well used, I'm actually going to be grinding down the top of this and repainting it if it's good, and clean the capacitor up. The top comes off it, not that it matters. It's got a little resistor on it as well. I mean, there's my screwdriver. I have one here, because the important thing to do, that'll do, is to make sure that it's shorted out, because caps without that little resistor on can hold a bit of a charge. So that's alright as well. I'll probably glue that top back on once I get it all cleaned up. But good thing is it's complete, and if I can't use the compressor, I'll at least be able to save this running gear for my other compressor that I got, which I'll get out. It's this one that I got in here is basically, you've seen videos on this one in the past anyway, but it's basically the next model up to that one there. This is the newer Tecum's Kirby. It's exactly the same pump and everything inside it, but it's just a lot newer, and hopefully the gear off of that one should be able to run this as well if I'm lucky. But clean it up a bit more. I'll pull that coil off later. I got it sideways because when the guy recovered it, I'm guessing a lot of the oil actually has worked its way into the condensing coil. So yeah, it's good. I've got to replace the oil in that anyway with some air compressor oil, because that's fridge oil is hydroscopic and absorbs water and it'll rust out the inside. So always remember that. Yeah, there's a fan as well. It's very simple. I've got to take that off as well actually. I think that's this one here. I'm not sure. Or that one there. And I'll just undo that because we can test that later on. That doesn't matter too much. I just want to see if the compressor works. Okay, well I've just done a resistance test on this and it's doing just fine. I'm actually going to show you how to do that in a minute, but beforehand I'll show you the relay quickly. That's it there, it's starting relay. That clips on your start and your main winding, which is start and run. And then that's your common up the top there. That just clips on. It looks like it's upside down, but it's the correct way. Then you got your cap, which gets the compressor going. But basically the way to read a compressor, in fact any single phase electric motor, to check whether it's in spec, is all you need is just your trusty multimeter, a calculator if you're really shit at maths like I am, and somewhere to write down your values. And basically what you do is you set your, if I can get the bloody thing undone, I've done it up too tight. You set your multimeter to resistance, which is the little omega symbol on your multimeter. You take your two probes, see how it's open loop because they're not touching, you put them together, you start to get a value. So what you do is you go first start to run or start to main, which is these two down the bottom here on this particular compressor, and you touch your probes on, if I can do this one-handed, and then you read your resistance on that, which came up to 35.8. It jumps around a bit, but when it goes stable, that's when you write it down. Then you go run to common, so that's your main or main to common. And you go one there, and then up to the top there, like I did. So go on that one there to that one there. Write down your resistance once it's stabilised, and then you go start to common, which is that one there to that one there. Do the same thing, read your resistance. And now the sum of these two, start to common and run to common, should equal start to run, which if it's 1 or 2 ohms out, it's still good. But if that's say like 103 and that's reading 35.8, then you know your compressor's stuffed, it's gone high resistance. Or if one of these is reading open loop, it's either you're not touching your pins properly or the compressor's burnt out. So keep that in mind if you haven't already. But that's reading pretty spot on. It's pretty much good for a test, I'd say. Got the just got to put all that back on. I might actually take that off again and repaint it, just because it's really rusted, until I can at least get another one from somewhere. And then we'll get this thing back together and give it a test, see if it works or not. Alrighty, well I've done a little bit more fiddling around with it, and it, well let's just say it works brilliantly. It's a very quiet compressor, you can't hear much operation of it. I mean, there's a little bit of noise from that, but this thing's working really well despite its age. I temporarily put the relay and everything back on just to test it, but I can take all that off later on and paint it up. I'm going to put some nice silver paint on it and make it look nice. Then I can set it up with a gas cylinder and use it as an air compressor. I've also taken the oil out, which I'm going to replace. I'm going to get some new stuff and put that in, but that's in really good condition as well, as you can see. I know my hand's a little bit shaky from holding that up, trying to get it all out, but the specs in it are actually already in the can before I put the oil in, by the way, so it's very clean. But enough talking, let's give it a test. Turn that radio down so you can hear it. So that's running. That's very quiet. Pulls a pretty tight vacuum as well. I'm gonna I don't want to run it too long without oil because I will seize it up. Once they seize up, you've got to cut it open and free it up again. So I'll get some oil out and we'll get that into it, and then we can paint it. God, that was thirsty. Alrighty, there we have it. All back together. Nice new coat of paint. It's all rust and stuff, by the way. That's not the paint that's done that. I'm going to give this side a bit more of a recoat later on, but it doesn't really matter. It's going to get knocked around anyway. I've done the bottom too. It works really well. I'm going to need to make up some kind of oil trap for it, because you do get a tiny little bit of a oil weep out of the discharge tube on it. Nothing too major, but you don't want oil going into car tyres and things, or into although a gas cylinder it wouldn't hurt at all, getting a bit of oil in that'd actually stop the inside rusting, I suppose. So it could be a good thing, but the only trouble is it means the compressor will be continually needing a oil top up. But it works, which is the main thing. First working compressor I've actually got, complete with the gear and everything. Thanks for watching.